Hey there, welcome back to HolyHollyTalks. In today's video, we're diving into the tangled mess that is the Alien franchise timeline. Funny story, this video was originally supposed to be all about the upcoming Alien Earth series and what the plot might be, but then I realized how ridiculously complicated the whole timeline has become. So yeah, I scrapped that plan and decided we need to sort through this chaotic timeline first. Now, if you've been around long enough to remember my old Texas Chainsaw Massacre timeline video, then you know the deal. I keep these timeline videos as spoiler-free as possible. That way, if you're new to the Alien franchise, you won't get spoiled, but can still get a decent idea of what you're about to step into. Because, honestly, with all these prequels and more prequels, it's hard to keep track. Oh, and I'll be throwing in some quick reviews of each movie along the way. Alright, this intro is already dragging on, so let's cut to the chase. But before we dive in, just a quick favor. Make sure to subscribe and hit that bell icon so you don't miss out on my latest videos. Instead of going by release order, I've decided to tackle the timeline in chronological order. So, with that in mind, the first project, although it's not even out yet, is the upcoming series Alien Earth, set to release in 2025. Yes, this is the same series I originally planned to focus on, but we'll get to that in a bit. Now, I don't have a lot to go on in terms of plot, aside from the fact that, with a title like Alien Earth, it's safe to assume it'll take place on, well, Earth. Not a prison planet or a spaceship this time around, which is honestly refreshing for this franchise. Oh, and let's not even get started on Alien vs. Predator. That's a discussion for another day. Timeline-wise, Alien Earth is set 30 years before the events of the original Alien movie, making it technically the first entry in the timeline. Kinda. Why the hesitation? Well, because that brings us to Prometheus, released in 2012. Now, this is where it gets debatable. Prometheus is set around 2092-2093 AD, which isn't far off from Alien Earth. But unlike the new series, Prometheus is all about the very beginning of, well, everything. Humanity, the engineers, the whole shebang. It's an incomplete origin story, which is why some people might argue it should come before Alien Earth. But, since I'm not counting flashbacks or moralizing intro sequences in these timeline videos, because that would be way too complicated, let's stick with 2093 AD for Prometheus. So quick summary, Alien Earth is set in 2092, Prometheus in 2093. Confused yet? Yeah, welcome to the Alien timeline. But don't worry, we'll dig into all the lingering questions and theories in another video, because sometimes, let's be honest, the fans think more critically about the plot than the writers themselves. Now, since Alien Earth hasn't dropped yet, I can't review it, but as for Prometheus, I actually like it. Sure, there's a lot to critique. If you didn't know, a ton of lore was cut from the original script, and there are deleted scenes as well. But overall, it's entertaining. In fact, there's a YouTube channel called Croft Talks About Movies that dives into one of the major deleted scenes, along with a key plot point that was completely cut from the script. I'll link that video in the comments below. Definitely worth checking out if you're interested in what could have been. So, back to Prometheus. It got some mixed reviews for good reason, but it's still a fun ride and totally watchable. Just don't go in expecting all the answers, because, like I said, a lot of the lore never made it to the final cut. The next movie in the franchise is Alien Covenant, which is set 11 years after the events of Prometheus, so we're in 2104 now, not too far off. In fact, Covenant directly connects with Prometheus with a couple of returning characters. Don't worry, no spoilers here for those of you just starting this chaotic timeline. Now here's the kicker. Alien Covenant ends on a huge cliffhanger. And since then, we haven't had a direct sequel to show what happened next. Instead, what we've gotten is a series of prequels to sequels to prequels. Yep, that's where we're at. I could honestly make a whole other video on the mess that is the Alien timeline, but for now, let's just say the lack of follow-up might be tied to Covenant's underperformance at the box office. And because of that, Ridley Scott and Disney hit the brakes and decided to go ahead with Alien Romulus, which, don't worry, we'll get to in a bit. Now, for my review of Covenant. Okay, Don't judge me if you're a die-hard fan of the franchise, but I kinda liked it. Yeah, I know, there are a lot of things to criticize, and trust me, I hate some of those parts just as much as anyone. But overall, I had a good time with it, and it definitely got me excited about the future of the franchise. That being said, I wouldn't be surprised if they go for a soft reboot of the series at some point, keeping the original Alien movies as canon, of course. Next up in the timeline is Alien, 1979, set in 2122, 18 years after the events of Covenant. Now, I love this movie. This was my first ever space sci-fi horror experience. Before that, I'd only watched supernatural horror, zombie flicks, slashers, the usual stuff. But Alien, it was my first time diving into space horror, and I enjoyed every second of it. Do I think it's the best in the franchise? Well, no. Wait, what? I know. Shocking, right? There's actually another movie in the series that I consider to be the best, but we'll get to that in a bit. That being said, this one is still my second favorite. Unlike Prometheus or Covenant, I have no major criticisms of this film, so I won't stretch out this review too long. Simply put, it's an amazing movie. The only criticism I could possibly tie in isn't even about Alien itself. It's more about Covenant. I know, I keep coming back to that one. There's just so much to criticize about it, and the worst part is, I still liked it. But I'll save that discussion for a spoiler-heavy deep dive. Alright, let's keep going. Next in the timeline is Alien Romulus, the freshest entry in the franchise, released on August 16th. The events are set in 2142, and personally, this is my third favorite Alien movie. It's not just me. Most people seem to agree, as Alien Romulus received a fantastic response from audiences, not only becoming a commercial hit, but also being widely embraced by the fans. It's absolutely worth watching. However, my advice? Don't overthink the connections to Prometheus and Covenant. Trust me, trying to link everything will just complicate things. Treat Romulus as a sequel to the original Alien, and you'll have a much smoother experience. Yes, there are subtle hints that link back to Prometheus and Covenant, but honestly, they're pretty loose and open to multiple interpretations. From the start, Alien Romulus was set up as a story bridging the gap between Alien and Aliens, which I've already touched on earlier. Without overcomplicating it, let's just say it stands well on its own. It's an amazing movie and can even serve as a standalone story. You're going to enjoy it. Also, I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments about Alien Romulus. What did you think? Next up in the timeline is Aliens, and boy, I've been waiting for this one. Hands down, this is my absolute favorite movie in the entire Alien franchise. In fact, I'd go so far as to say it's the best in the series. Now, I do think Aliens leans more toward action than horror, unlike Alien, 1979, but it still delivers in its own way. To be honest, both films have distinct vibes and dedicated fan bases. Some think Alien is the best, while others, like me, place Aliens at the top. And I totally respect that. Everyone's got their own taste. I could talk about Aliens forever, that's how much I love it, but let's stick to the timeline for now. Aliens is a direct sequel to Alien, continuing the story of Ellen Ripley, who, by the way, is one of the most badass female characters ever created. And in this movie, she really proves why. As for the timeline, Aliens is set in 2179, many years after the events of Alien. It's an incredible continuation of the story, and Ripley's journey just gets better. Next in the timeline is Alien 3, the direct sequel to Aliens. And well, let's just say it didn't exactly win any popularity contests. Honestly, even I don't like it much. Timeline-wise, it's set 1 year after the events of Aliens, but if you're not a die-hard fan of the franchise, I'd honestly suggest stopping at Aliens. Seriously, just wait for the Alien Earth series coming in 2025, which I mentioned earlier. Now, as much as Alien 3 missed the mark, it did at least give Ellen Ripley's character an ending. Was it a bad ending or a heroic one? That's up for debate. But hey, at least she got some closure, until Alien Resurrection came along and messed that up. Sure, Resurrection had some fun action scenes with Ripley, but something about her just felt off, and honestly, it was hard to care. Alien Resurrection is set way in the future, in 2379. Yep, that far ahead that I almost stopped caring. The ending left room for more if they ever want to continue the storyline, but personally, I'd prefer a soft reboot of both Alien 3 and Resurrection. But hey, that's just my opinion. I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments. And all this wraps up what I'll call Timeline 1. But now, let's speculate for a moment. What if the studio decides to reboot or take the franchise in a new direction? We could be looking at multiple timelines. If they're indeed planning a soft reboot of the entire franchise, I believe they've already set the wheels in motion. That timeline could end up looking something like this. Now, why mention Alien Earth? Well, because it's been marketed as a series set 30 years before the events of Alien. Interestingly, there's no mention of Prometheus or Covenant, even though it's close to their time period. But again, since the series hasn't been released yet, the timeline could look like this. And no, I won't be discussing the Alien vs. Predator movies, in case you were wondering. If we were to consider them, they would technically be the first two movies in the Alien franchise timeline. But for that to happen, we'd have to completely ignore the Predator franchise, which, let's be honest, has its own complicated timeline with reboots, soft reboots, prequels, and everything else going on recently. Looking at all these timelines and potential directions, it's clear that the Alien franchise has plenty of room to grow, whether they choose to dive deeper into prequels, reboots, or new sequels altogether. Who knows what twists and turns are coming next? But whatever happens, it's sure to spark more debates, theories, and excitement among fans like us. With that said, I'd love to hear your thoughts. What do you think the future holds for the Alien franchise? Drop your theories in the comments, and if you're just as hooked on this franchise as I am, make sure to subscribe so you don't miss our next deep dive. Until then, keep your pulse rifles ready and stay tuned to Holy Holly Talks.